While people are still worrying about food additives, formaldehyde in clothes, BPA in tableware, and even microplastics released from plastic milk teacups, have you ever thought about this? Today, even earrings and bracelets may be quietly releasing toxins into your body. Every time you wear them, it's like secretly wrestling with an invisible enemy. Cheap jewelry looks shiny and delicate on the surface, but behind it is a shocking reality of weak regulation and a rampant black industry chain. When the whole market is only competing on who is cheaper and who makes a higher profit, the ones who really bear the risk are always the people at the bottom: students, factory girls, young mothers, and even innocent children. This is not alarmism, it is a silent, invisible but deadly health gamble. Every piece of cheap jewelry may be a slow-acting time bomb, quietly eating away at the health of you and the people around you. Don't miss the next drop, subscribe and hit the bell. The horrifying truth behind cheap jewelry exposed. Recently, a bombshell story exploded in mainland China, carcinogens in cheap jewelry exceeding the limit by more than 9,000 times. It shot straight up the trending lists and smashed the public's trust in domestic gold and silver jewelry. On November 24th, several mainland media outlets, including Guangzhou Daily, Qilu Evening News, and the Beijing News, jointly released a horrifying test result. They randomly bought 21 pieces of jewelry from 20 online and offline shops and sent them for testing. The results can be summed up in 4 words: too horrible to look at. Out of the 21 pieces, 17 had coating layers that failed to meet standards. One bracelet labeled silver-plated had a silver coating of only 0.24 micrometers, while the standard is 2 micrometers. Another bracelet labeled gold-plated was even more outrageous. Its coating was just 0.03 micrometers, while the standard is 0.5 micrometers, a difference of 16 times. But what truly makes one's scalp tingle is a pair of earrings from a jewelry wholesale market in Guangzhou. The seller proudly stamped S925 on them, meaning 92.5% silver. But when they were tested, the main component on the surface of the earrings turned out to be cadmium. And the cadmium content reached 9.28 times 10 to the power of 4 mg/kg, exceeding the national limit of 100 mg per kilogram by 9,280 times. In other words, you thought you were wearing sterling silver, but you were actually wearing 92.8% carcinogenic metal on your ears. Cadmium is an internationally recognized Group 1 carcinogen. It accumulates in the body over the long term and is hard to metabolize. What's even more painful is that this is not a one-off problem, it's an industry norm that has already rotted to the core. In early November this year, Shanghai regulators conducted spot checks. Of 19 brands, 8 batches failed, with cadmium, nickel, lead, and other heavy metals directly exceeding limits. On October 27, Shenghua News reported that testing at Hangzhou International Jewelry City found that the nickel release from some gold-filled items was actually thousands of times the national standard. On August 11, media outlets sent 19 pieces of jewelry to be tested in Wuhan, and the results were even more absurd. A silver chain stamped S925 contained only 13% silver, one chain was simply white copper. Among 3 pairs of earrings labeled 925 silver posts, the main metals were iron, copper, and only one was real silver. In early August, a well-known testing blogger, Dad's Lab, examined 8 pairs of earrings labeled 925 silver. The result: 6 of them were actually copper alloys with seriously excessive levels of nickel, cadmium, and lead. The most extreme one had a nickel release 61 times over the limit and cadmium content 1,179 times over. After seeing these numbers, when you look at earrings, necklaces, and bracelets again, they no longer seem just cheap, they feel like mystery boxes of poison. What harm do toxic metals do to the human body? So how dangerous are these toxic metals to the human body? The answer is more direct, and more heartbreaking, than you might think. According to the U.S. Department of Labor's Occupational Safety and Health Administration, cadmium and its compounds are highly toxic. Mere exposure can cause cancer and damage the cardiovascular, kidney, gastrointestinal, nervous, reproductive, and respiratory systems. Almost no part of the body is spared. The U.S. Department of Health and Human Services has also clearly stated, lead and lead compounds may likewise cause cancer. Long-term exposure can affect nearly every organ and system in the body. Symptoms include reduced learning ability, memory decline, poor concentration, and even neurological problems such as weakness in fingers, wrists, and ankles. That's just international data. Looking at domestic clinical data, the situation is no less worrying. According to dermatology data from Peking University People's Hospital, in the first half of 2025, cases of jewelry-induced dermatitis caused by wearing low-quality metal jewelry increased significantly year-on-year. Even worse, testing showed that nearly 60% of the so-called silver jewelry these patients wore was actually copper alloy or low-grade metal. And the clinical symptoms are far from just a bit itchy. Some people had oozing ulcers on their earlobes, some developed large patches of pigmentation on the neck, some cases evolved into chronic contact dermatitis, and in very rare cases, warning signs of abnormal cell proliferation appeared. These are not emotional descriptions but a faithful presentation of actual clinical cases. Toxic jewelry is not just cheap junk, it is a real, concrete health gamble. The calculation behind toxic jewelry. At this point, many people may ask, why do these manufacturers use metals they know are toxic? The answer is brutally simple: cheap, pretty, easy to sell, and highly profitable. It's not that businesses don't know cadmium and nickel are toxic. On the contrary, they know all too well where the cost difference lies. Look at the most straightforward price comparison. Silver price, 2024 about 5,800 to 6,200 RMB per kilogram, precious metals market quotes. Nickel, about 28 to 35 RMB per kilogram, London Metal Exchange 2024 data. Cadmium salts, about 80 to 120 RMB per kilogram, widely used industrially, produced in large volume, very cheap. Zinc aluminum alloy is even more shocking, about 15 to 22 RMB per kilogram. Manufacturers simply replace real silver with these materials. The cost is instantly smashed to the floor, and profit margins can soar above 95%. And it's not just cheap, the effect is good enough to fool people. Cadmium plating looks whiter, shinier, and more scratch-resistant than silver, giving an instant high-end look at first glance. After polishing, nickel can look like white gold. Wear it out and almost no one can see it's fake. Using these materials also means they can skip costly wastewater treatment and environmental equipment. They don't need to build proper facilities and can save millions. You'll realize that in these manufacturers' calculations, toxic is not the problem, not making enough money is the problem. Under this profit model, toxic jewelry continuously flows out and becomes a stubborn disease in the market that is hard to eradicate. Who is buying cheap jewelry? According to the Mainland Jewelry Consumption Safety Survey report published by iResearch in 2025, online jewelry sales in China exceeded 126 billion renminbi over the past 2 years, with low-priced jewelry accounting for more than 63%. About 37% of consumers had purchased 925 silver products on platforms. So the question is, who exactly is supporting this huge low-priced jewelry market? The data reveals a harsh structure. In 2025, the median disposable monthly income of urban residents in mainland China was around 4,200 renminbi. Truly up-to-standard silver jewelry is only affordable for less than 35% of this population. In other words, if more than 60% of people want to buy jewelry at all, they are automatically pushed into the low-price, high-toxicity zone. From here it's easy to infer who the real main consumers of 9.9 to 69 RMB cheap toxic jewelry are. Vocational school, junior college, technical school, and high school girls. 18 to 23-year-old young women who just graduated, working in factories, shops, or as beauty trainees. Female factory workers on assembly lines, standing 10 to 12 hours a day, earning 3,000 to 5,500 RMB a month. Waitresses, bubble tea shop staff, supermarket cashiers, and young women sorting packages in warehouses. Girls from 3RD-, 4TH-, and 5th-tier cities and counties, born after 95 or 2000, who love dressing up but have low incomes. Young mothers buying earrings and bracelets for their 6 to 14-year-old daughters. Young people who make short videos, run street stalls, or live stream and need to constantly change accessories. In short, they are in factories, in small towns, and in rented rooms, counting every coin to get through the month. Jewelry is not a necessity, food, housing, and transport are. The little pocket money they manage to save simply can't afford genuine 925 silver or gold, so they can only choose from the cheapest pile. One netizen summed it up in a sentence that sounds harsh but is painfully true: the rich build their aesthetic with money, the poor build their fineness while breathing poison. It's not that they don't care about health. It's that they have no choice. When the whole market is competing on who is cheaper, the first thing that gets cut is never the seller's profit, but the product's bottom line, and in the end, what gets silently erased is human safety. The black industry chain. Once we understand who is buying, a more realistic and brutal question surfaces: how exactly are these cheap yet high-risk pieces of jewelry made? Some netizens summarize the chain into roughly 5 links. Black factories at the source. In places like Kaohsiung, Beijing, and Dingguan in Guangdong, there are large numbers of small workshops that process jewelry. Most of these factories do not have full legal qualifications, have no heavy metal treatment systems, and don't even meet the most basic standards for ventilation and dust removal. To drive costs to the extreme, silver is replaced with white copper, lead alloys, and melted scrap metal. Coating thickness is compressed to 0.02 to 0.05 micrometers. Lead-containing solder is used on a large scale, and industrial or chemical brightening agents are added just to increase shine. In the end, an item that costs less than 0 renminbi and 50 cents to make is packaged as affordable luxury and sold for tens of yuan. Distribution through wholesale markets. These 50-cent cost pieces made in small workshops don't go straight to consumers. Their first stop is offline wholesale markets around the country. Here, goods are sold by the kilo and bagged by the sack. Every cent shaved off cost becomes another layer of profit. Every new layer of profit attracts a new group of distributors. E-commerce and live stream channels. The ones who truly bring these toxic pieces of jewelry into thousands of households are e-commerce live stream rooms. The host only needs to turn the lights to maximum, set the camera to the whitest tone, and say, "It's super shiny." All 925 silver, and consumers rush in. For something that costs 0 renminbi and 50 cents, even if it's sold for just 19 renminbi and 90 cents, the price has already multiplied more than 40-fold. Platform algorithmic promotion. The thing that makes these products spread wildly is the platform algorithms. What do algorithms love most? Products with high conversion rates, low return rates, low prices, and fast clicks. The result is this: the cheaper and lower quality the jewelry, the more likely it is to be pushed to those who already can't afford real silver jewelry. Thus, a whole mechanism of cheap, beautiful, high sales, massive promotion becomes fixed in place, pushing tens of millions of consumers into a deep pit of heavy metal risk. The consumer's body as the end point. Once the algorithm finishes its job, the chain closes. The pollution from black factories, the markups of wholesalers, the tricks of live streamers, and the boosting of platforms, on whose shoulders do they ultimately land? On the bodies of middle school girls wearing earrings, factory women wearing bracelets, and all those young women with limited finances who still want to decorate themselves. Regulatory failure and prevention. After talking about the industry chain, the circulation channels, and the risks consumers bear, we reach the final link, the one that is also the most frustrating: regulatory failure and how to prevent harm. Low-quality gold and silver jewelry has been flooding the market for a long time, posing an ongoing threat to consumer health, yet CCP regulation is practically a sham. Market regulators mostly conduct spot checks after the fact and rarely clean things up before products enter circulation. According to data released by the National Market Regulation System in 2025, only about 4,700 batches of jewelry were specifically tested nationwide that year. But the total number of SKU items for jewelry online and offline exceeds 28 million. In other words, actual regulatory coverage is less than 0.17%. Put another way, when you buy jewelry, your odds of getting a compliant product may be lower than your odds of winning the lottery. More frustrating still, even when non-compliant products are discovered, most penalties are limited to fines of a few thousand yuan, product removal, and rectification. These sellers can simply change their ID, change the brand shell, and quickly get back online, continuing to circulate through the system. Regulation has not truly cut off the black chain, it has only snipped a few exposed blades of grass, while the toxic jewelry hidden in the weeds continues to quietly spread. So what can ordinary people do to protect themselves? Netizens have summed up several practical tips. Don't buy ultra-cheap pieces, avoid metal jewelry priced just a few yuan to a dozen yuan. The cheaper it is, the more likely it comes from industrial metal or scrap. Choose jewelry with proper certification. It doesn't guarantee 100% safety, but it is at least more reliable. Pay attention to your skin after wearing. If you notice discoloration, peeling, redness, itching, or roughness, remove the jewelry immediately. Have doubtful pieces tested. For jewelry without certificates that you are especially keen to wear, you can take them to a gold or jewelry shop for appraisal. Children's jewelry is also a disaster zone. Kids' skin is more sensitive, so you must buy from regular manufacturers and avoid cheap toxic pieces. Dear viewers, after seeing these data and cases, you may ask yourself, are the pieces of jewelry on my body really safe? Could they also be hiding dangerous levels of toxins? In fact, the truly terrifying thing has never been 9,000 times over the limit, but when 9,000 times becomes normal, because no one can guarantee that the next 10,000 times won't appear.